The bell above the door jingled as Clint Eastwood entered Miller's diner. The place oozed retro charm, chrome stools, checkered floors, and a silent jukebox. His slow, deliberate steps echoed as he made his way to a booth in the corner, drawing quiet glances from a few patrons. Jake, the diner's most confident server, leaned against the counter, sipping a soda and smirking. He nudged his coworker Danny, the newest member of the team. "Hey, check out the cowboy," Jake said, nodding toward Clint. "Bet he's got a 6-shooter in his truck and a saddlebag full of stories." Danny, still fumbling with a tray of glasses, chuckled nervously. "I mean, he does kind of look like one of those old Western guys." Jake laughed, picking up a menu. "Yeah, probably one of those dudes who sits around telling tall tales about the good old days. Watch this." As Clint settled into his booth, Jake strolled over, menu in hand, his grin cocky. "Morning, sir," he said, a playful tone in his voice. "Welcome to Miller's Diner. What can I get for you today?" "Coffee and eggs, that's the classic, right?" Clint looked up, his weathered face calm, his eyes steady. He didn't react to the tone, didn't rise to the bait. "Coffee. Black," he said, his voice slow and deliberate. "And the breakfast special, if you've got one." Jake scribbled the order on his notepad, the smirk still on his face. "Sure thing, cowboy. I'll have that out for you in no time." Clint gave a small nod and turned his attention to the window, where a sparrow hopped along the pavement outside. Behind the counter, Danny watched the exchange, shifting uncomfortably. "You think he heard you?" Danny asked quietly when Jake returned. Jake shrugged, leaning casually against the counter. "Who cares? What's he going to do, write me a letter?" "Relax, rookie. He's just another old-timer trying to relive the past." Marlene, the senior waitress and unofficial den mother of the staff, overheard the conversation as she carried a tray of plates to a nearby table. She paused, giving Jake a sharp look. "You two need to learn when to shut your mouths," she said. "That man could be anyone. Could be a millionaire for all you know." Jake rolled his eyes. "Sure, Marlene, and I'm Elvis reincarnated." Marlene shook her head and muttered under her breath as she walked away. Danny, still uneasy, glanced over at Clint, who seemed completely at ease, sipping his coffee and gazing out the window. A family sat a few booths away, a father reading the newspaper, a mother scrolling on her phone, and a teenage girl stealing glances at Clint. She leaned toward her mother, whispering excitedly, "Mom, I think that's Clint Eastwood." Her mother barely looked up. "Honey, don't be ridiculous. Why would Clint Eastwood be in a place like this?" "But it looks just like him," the girl insisted, her voice rising slightly. "I've seen his movies. It's him, I'm telling you." The father lowered his newspaper, glancing over briefly. "Even if it is, leave the man alone. Let him eat in peace." The girl crossed her arms, clearly frustrated but unwilling to disobey her parents. She continued to sneak glances at Clint, hoping for some sign that she was right. Jake carried Clint's breakfast to the table, setting the plate down with a bit too much force. "Here you go, partner," he said, the word dripping with mockery. "Enjoy." Clint looked up briefly, his expression unreadable. "Thanks," he said, his tone as calm as ever. He picked up his fork and began eating, slow and deliberate. As Jake returned to the counter, Danny leaned closer. "Don't you think you're pushing it a little? What if he really is someone famous?" Jake laughed. "Oh, come on. What are the odds? Look, even if he was famous, what's he doing here? Famous people don't eat at diners like this. Still, Danny said, lowering his voice, Marlene's right. You shouldn't judge people like that. What if he tips big or something? Jake scoffed.
Yeah.
Right. A guy like that? We'd be lucky if he leaves us a couple bucks. Marlene walked by, glaring at Jake. You keep running that mouth, and you'll scare away what little tip money you get, she said. Mark my words, kid. You don't know who you're talking to. Jake shrugged her off, but Danny couldn't shake the feeling that Marlene was right. As Clint ate, he observed the diner's bustling activity. The truckers at the counter swapped stories about bad roads and long hauls. A young couple in the corner laughed quietly, sharing a plate of pancakes. The teenage girl continued to glance his way, her curiosity unabated. When Clint finished his meal, he folded his napkin neatly and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a crisp $100 bill and placed it under the check. Then, taking a pen from his jacket, he wrote something on a napkin and left it on the table. Jake watched from the counter, nudging Danny. Here we go. Let's see if Grandpa left us a fortune. Clint stood, tipped his hat slightly, and walked toward the door. The bell jingled as he left, and the room seemed to quiet for a moment. Jake sauntered over to the table, smirking as he picked up the check and the money. His smirk faltered as he read the note on the napkin. Danny, noticing Jake's expression, walked over. What's it say? Jake swallowed hard and handed him the napkin. Danny read it aloud, a little kindness goes a long way. Thanks for the coffee. Clint Eastwood. Danny's jaw dropped. Wait. Clint Eastwood? The Clint Eastwood? Jake stared at the $100 bill, the weight of realization sinking in. No way, he muttered. That can't be. Marlene appeared beside them, snatching the napkin from Danny's hand. She read it and let out a low chuckle. Well, looks like the cowboy you've been mocking all morning just happens to be one of the biggest stars in the world. Jake ran a hand through his hair, his confidence crumbling. Oh man. We were joking about Clint Eastwood. Danny shook his head, still in disbelief. And he heard us. He totally heard us. Marlene smirked, handing the napkin back to Jake. Maybe next time you'll think twice before opening that big mouth of yours. Outside, Clint climbed into his truck, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at his lips as he pulled onto the highway. The rising sun bathed the road ahead in golden light. He'd seen this kind of behavior before, youthful arrogance, quick judgments, but he knew better than to let it bother him. Life had a way of teaching its own lessons, and he figured the two waiters would learn theirs soon enough. The radio crackled to life, an old country song filling the cab. Clint tapped his fingers against the steering wheel, his expression calm and thoughtful, as he drove off toward the horizon.